Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Health and Wealth Podcast with your hosts, Tim and Carter.
What's trending, Enrichers? Carter Wilcoxon, founder of CSI Financial Group here, with my co-host and former wealth advisor, Tim James, founder of
ChemicalFreeBody.com and your new health advisor. This is the show where we reveal the connection between physical and financial abundance.
Hey, welcome back, Enrichers. Carter Wilcoxon here, coming to you from a cool, brisk March day in Phoenix, Arizona. I am very excited about our guest that we have on today. But before we bring him in, let me go ahead and bring in my esteemed co-host and fantastic friend and my own personal health advisor, Mr. Chemical Free Body himself, Tim James.
I'm a health planner.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Our last podcast.
No, advisor. Yeah, advisor's a good one too.
Yeah, health advisor, planner. Yeah,
basically what it is. I've been using the word coach for quite a while, but yeah, man. Hey, Carter, thanks for having me on the show today. I appreciate it.
Well, I don't know what I would do without you. Quite literally.
Well, I bet you could probably pull off about 50% of that third segment now.
You know, I got to tell you something. It's interesting. The last recording we were doing, it is sort of like a common theme that we keep going through and everything. And I've heard it so many times. Of course, now I incorporate it and implement it into my own health journey and everything. So, I probably could get away with it if I had to, but I don't want to.
Yeah. So I'll let you know if I have to take a vacation. It's the Carter and Carter show then for at least an episode. I'll have to try it out. See how you do.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Well, anyway, things are great, man. Got the new driveway down at the parents' house. So, I can now move my travel trailer in as we get ready to do construction on mom and dad's house and build a huge addition on. So big project. Now I've just one more thing to do. Now I'm a general contractor for the next 8 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about, every chance I get, I want to talk about my family because that is actually my why, which is a common theme for a lot of the advisors that we have.
I thought you were going to say, I want to talk a little bit about Mark Willis, our guest.
I do want to talk about Mark Willis a whole bunch, actually. But before I bring him in, I just want to give a shout out to my son, Carter Samuel. He had he traveled, obviously I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. He started playing high school golf this year. He's on the varsity team. He's a freshman. And they went up to Kingman, Arizona. And apparently, my grandfather or his grandfather, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, they live in just outside of like Laughlin. So it's not that far from Kingman. So they went to go watch him play. And apparently it was like 57 degrees outside, winds howling like 25 miles an hour. And my son came in second place for the 9 holes in his high school match and shot 40 for the 9 holes. So nice. Pretty good considering the fact that, he's a, 15-year-old freshman and it's howling at 25 miles an hour. He said that he could barely feel his hands that he was so cold. But anyway, I always like to give a shout out to my son and, or, any part of my family. I thought it was well worth it and well deserved, even though he probably will never hear this podcast. Well, maybe not anytime soon. But with that, Enrichers, we are very excited about our next guest, who actually has his own podcast, which we will get a chance to talk with, Mark Willis from Lake Growth. And I know we're going to talk about your podcast and give a plug for that for sure. So coming in from just outside of Chicago, Illinois. So Mark, thank you for coming on the show today.
Hey, my pleasure. Glad to be on.
Yeah, we're very excited. And Richards, get ready because he has a lot to offer and he will be able to share lots. He has his own podcast, which I'm a little jealous of, even though we just got started. We have episode 49 rolling out tomorrow, Tim James. Can you believe that?
Woohoo.
49, almost half century mark. We got to do a follow-up half century. We did a quarter century. Now we got to do a 50 podcast update, right?
Yeah, why not?
Halfway to a century. So anyway, Mark Willis, we are very excited about having you on here, and thanks again. So let's go ahead and get started. And Richards like to hear your backstory. What brought you into the financial services business and gave you that heart for wanting to help people or maybe other advisors learn what it is that you are doing in your practice and everything. But let's go back to, where did it kind of get started? Like, what do you remember first intrigued you with getting into this arena?
Well, how far back do you want to go?
I want to go back as far as you. If it was you were at Sunday school and your Sunday school teacher was talking about numbers on the board, and you're like, I really like numbers and everything. And if that was what it was, whatever, how far?
Well, hey, there's a book of the Bible. It's called Numbers. So I think that's actually an interesting way to go back, all the way back. My first memory of money is actually of me collecting little coins and dollar bills. How many of us had little, piggy banks, whatever? Mine was in a paper bag in my sock drawer, basically, just stashing my allowance or whatever. And I had accumulated a little tidy sum for a little 5 or 6 year old kid. I had like $50 to my name. I mean, that's more than most college grads have after they graduate with so much student loan debt. And so my at that time, my little paper bag was all I had. So my mom got me in the car and took me to the local bank. And the job was to open a checking account to give me some experience with the financial world, whatever. And I certainly, didn't have much in the way of financial education growing up, but my mom was kind enough to take me to the bank to get me a little checking account. And I'm looking at this stranger in the bank. He's got a suit and tie on. He looks respectable enough. I'm a little 5-year-old kid looking up at this giant. And this guy wants to take my precious little paper bag away from me. And he's going to put it in some sort of vault and do what with it? I don't know. But I didn't trust the guy. And so I didn't, I ended up, fast forward about 25 years, and banks are about as trustworthy as I expected they'd be as that little 5-year-old kid. I ended up with 6 figures of student loan debt after I graduate college and no plan to pay it off. I graduate in 2008 from my grad degree with no job and no real, prospects of paying off the debt. And fast forward a few more years, I'm sick and tired of the average way of doing things. So I get my certified financial planner designation and become not your average financial planner. And that's where our podcast name came from, Not Your Average Financial Podcast. We work with clients all over the country in all 50 states. We sit down one-on-one over Zoom or over the phone, have a discussion about the things that truly matter to people. I think people are really aware now that it's all, in many ways, it's a shell game. It's a ruse. It's more than just not much more than just wallpapering over the problems that we've seen accumulate now for 30 plus years. And there's days of reckoning to come. So banks seem to be at the center of all of it. I mean, you look at the headlines of whether it's Russia and seizing bank accounts in Canada, and regardless of your politics, banks seem to be behind the biggest problems in people's financial lives. Whether you're a family or whether you're a country, whether it's crypto or whether it's a checking account or whether it's a little paper bag for a 5-year-old kid, banks seem to be in the way of us having a solid, reasonable financial life. I'll call it a sane life.
And some financial freedom, right? So
that's right. Yeah.
And we'll probably get a little bit deeper into the next segment and everything. So you're a 5-year-old, and that's your first experience on, trusting, if you will, somebody with your money, right? So that was where it's your infancy of the financial services. So then let's fast forward a little bit, to junior high or high school and everything. What are some of the things? What are maybe some of the classes that you're taking, or when do you know that you're going to become a financial advisor as you get older?
Well, it's not in high school, that's for sure. I think in college, even, that was not my degree. I did not grow up with financial education on my mind. It was the furthest thing from my mind, in fact. And it wasn't until that first student loan payment came due, and I thought, well, wait a minute, they want me to pay them back? I mean, that was sort of a surprise. Right. And so it gave me sort of a reason to pay attention to my money for the first time ever. Probably better figure out how we're going to cover this regular bill that keeps coming in every month. That was sort of when the light bulb went off, that money seemed to impact our day-to-day. And so we got around to making our own budget, got interested in finance, worked for a CPA firm at the time in the midst of the Great Recession. So listening to her call her clients, some of them 60, 62, 65 years old, and watching the account values dropping in the midst of the Great Recession, she had that fateful conversation with them saying, "I'm sorry, Mr. Client, but well, I just lost half your life savings."
Mm-hmm.
And that's a jaw dropper. It almost got me out of the business.
That's a wake up call, right?
Yeah. Shoot. Yeah. Well, I was glad that I was listening to that call, not making the call. And I just almost decided to say, no, thanks. Let me go find a McDonald's to serve some fries or something, because I don't want to be doing this for my career. But it really pushed through it. McDonald's, right? There's no chemicals there, right?
Yeah. No one's going to McDonald's no time soon.
That's right. So, the Golden Arches wasn't on my path, but I will say I almost got out of the financial services business to go find anything else to do. And thankfully I stuck with it. Felt like I was being dropped into the front lines of a war, basically, to try to do any kind of financial planning. And my reason for starting our own financial firm was out of discovery of strategies that helped me and my wife pay off our own personal student loans in a way that was better than just Dave Ramsey's snowball method, for lack of a better phrase. And that's what got me super pumped to share with anyone who would listen some of the strategies that we now use as a cornerstone to our financial practice.
So earlier you're talking about, you said we. I'm assuming when you said we, you're talking about you and your spouse. So you've got, so you're married,
kiddo, little 4-year. Well, she's now 6 years old. Goodness, and she's the light of our life for sure.
So one daughter, and then where did you guys meet? Did you meet in high school, college? Were you hanging out at thinking about maybe being a manager at the local McDonald's, and what happened?
We met in, the long story, I'll keep it as short as possible. We met in Texas, but we fell in love in Japan. And we were talking about this before we hit record, that my wife has some background in Japanese, and it was climbing Mount Fuji that, one, we fell in love, but two, we almost died. But that's maybe a story for another day.
No, I mean, hey, we want to hear the story. Tell us all about it.
All right. Well, we're climbing up Mount Fuji, and that's tough. That's difficult. That's almost impossible to do. All right. And that's almost impossible to do, but it's coming down the mountain that really made me feel like I was about to die. So I'm excited about sort of sharing what that was like. I can go further if you want, but thank goodness we both made it down the mountain.
Well, first of all, so you met in Texas,
mm-hmm.
and then somehow you ended up in Japan together.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Was that just specifically to go on Mount Fuji and climb it?
Well, we were there for a mission trip. We had done some ministry together and wanted to go to Japan to help with that project. And we were teaching English. And one of our weekend getaways was with a small group of people who wanted to climb Mount Fuji. And so we just said, all right, we're going to just do this thing for the day. And I'm telling you, man, I burned more calories than I probably ever have before. The fun and the thrill of climbing that mountain was a lot of fun. Going up the mountain, they give you the stick and you climb up the mountain, and every couple of, mile or, half a mile you go up, they brand your stick with another level to say you made it to this level in the video game of this mountain, and they brand it, and then as you come down, you can show off your cool stick to people. And we still got the 2 sticks, kind of as a metaphor for life here in our house.
So explain a little bit. So you get to a point on Mount Fuji, right?
Yep.
Where you're like, we've gone high enough. But you could go higher. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah. Well, there was actually a gentleman who helped us up the mountain, and he was this wonderful Japanese individual.
Sherpa.
Sherpa, basically. Yeah. He was just a buddy of ours, but he just kept saying, just a little farther, just a little farther, just a little farther. And every 100 yards or whatever, he'd just say it again. He said, we're almost done. Here's the end right up here. But we just kept going, and he just kept giving us those little incentives to keep moving. And for a lot of us, that's sort of how life goes. Sometimes you just have to have someone encouraging you to go just a little bit further.
Yeah. So how cold is it up there once you get to the highest point you got to? How cold was it at that time?
Well, it was summer, so it wasn't it was just all the wild changes of the weather. It would go from rainy to sunny to hot to dry to rainy again. It was almost like you were hitting all these different weather patterns as you went up the mountain. Really strange. Have you ever done any mountain climbing?
Well, I nothing like Mount Fuji for sure. I mean, you know, and people don't think this, but there are actually quite a few mountains here in Arizona to be able to climb. And, you know, one of the most famous ones is Camelback Mountain. A lot of people go and climb that and stuff like that. But I've never done anything like significant mountain climbing for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, and I'll relate this to the financial advisors who might be listening. Most financial planners build a financial practice on the accumulation side of the mountain.
Yeah.
Which is fine and fair and right to do. I mean, it's literally called assets under management for a reason. So imagine you're accumulating assets as you go up the mountain. And then we get to the top of the mountain, and because Tim has done such a great job keeping us healthy for all these years, we now have to come down the mountain, and we've lived so healthy. We're going to live a very long time, but nobody's incentivized on Wall Street to help you down the mountain. It's the Sherpa analogy of getting left at the top of the mountain, right?
Yep.
In fact, I was reading in National Geographic that 85% of deaths are coming down Mount Everest.
Yep.
Not going up. It's coming down that kills you. And that's how it felt for me going down Mount Fuji. It was just this nightmare of gravity. I hard to describe it any other way. And most people, again, they're not getting calls back from their AUM guy or gal, their assets under management guy, because heck, you know, they're chasing that 35-year-old with the IRA that can accumulate for another 20 or 30 years. So anyway, I'm being a little harsh here, but the truth is, you know, if you ask a barber if you need to grow out your hair, you can bet what his answer is going to be, because the incentive of the business model is to keep your hair short. And similarly, it's to accumulate, not to distribute. So we need distributors in the retirement space. We need people who are, you know, experts in retirement income planning. And I know you guys are specialists in annuities. That's one great tool for helping to plan that projection of lifetime income. And it helps people down that mountain, you know, plant the flag back down at the next generation. And then the estate planning side, you're able to pass the baton or hand off your backpack of provisions to the next generation.
Yeah. Yeah. And then of course, you know, utilizing life insurance as that entire, you know,
That's right.
Self-completion of the inevitable for all of us, right? Eventually
That's right.
You get to the very end of the mountain when it's just your time. Right.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the completion of our life. Right. And it's going to come full circle. So, man, that's a really cool story. So when you were in high school and college and stuff like that, you really didn't have any idea that you were going to become a financial advisor is what you're saying then.
Oh, let's just say this. I don't know too many kids that do think that. Maybe the nerds, the uber nerds, maybe, or maybe the super cool, or maybe the wealthy kids, you know. But I certainly didn't. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in hand for sure.
Yeah.
So no, it was not. I was looking at other projects for sure.
That wasn't your trajectory. So, so did you have some other aspirations that you were looking at? Obviously, you said that you went on a mission and everything. Were you thinking about getting into like mission work and you know, maybe evangelizing and things like that? Is that where you were? Was that?
Well, you know, I'll share a bit about that. I had I had 2 degrees in ministry and theology and all that. I actually got my master's of divinity, which is sort of a seminary degree in college. But I never really wanted to be behind a pulpit anywhere. I didn't see that as my calling necessarily. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just wasn't what I wanted to do with my career. I thought that that'd be a great thing to do as volunteer, but not necessarily as a career. So we moved to Chicago and planned to volunteer with a ministry up here, and loved the experience, but didn't exactly pay the bills, if you know what I mean, full time or anything. So we raised some support and all that to go on those trips and to come here to Chicago, but we really needed something full time. And that's where money really became an interest of mine. You know, I had some background with other interesting, you know, we're all kind of Renaissance people as little kids, right? Like I did some radio shows. I did the TV show for my high school, art, comic books, cartoons, almost got into college for the violin. And then I think I take all those things and say all that to just say, you know, we kind of bring, and I started my degrees in psychology, but what I really loved was just the experience of being with people like my friends and our colleagues in college, and having those conversations where you're laying out on the grass. Like, I have this memory of laying out in this big open field after a big ice cream milkshake with my friends, and we're all talking about what we're going to be when we grow up, and having conversations with them about like what's important in life to you today, and what kind of life do you want to live. And it's the same kind of conversations I get to have now in financial planning, when you're talking to people about what their goals are, what they're trying to achieve, what's important about their goals to them. And I hate to be sort of break the fourth wall here, guys, but I have somebody here at my door, and I thought he'd be here a lot later, but he's our electrician. So what should I do?
Well, I think that's a perfect way for us to be able to take our next break. What do you think, James?
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, let's take a quick break, and when Mark gets back from getting that electrician straightened up, we'll dive into what he's doing in his practice to help people protect their assets. We'll be right back.
Estate planning. What does that even mean? When the inevitable happens for everyone on this planet, your estate plan kicks into action. But first, let's start with what an estate is. An estate is simply everything you own. Now, here's the issue and what needs to be understood when this event occurs. You only have two choices on this plan. Number one, either you plan how your estate gets handed out and distributed to those you leave behind. Or number two, your state decides who gets everything you own. For the first time ever, you can now take complete and total control of this plan that you've been deprived of for most of your life and generations before you. You can get personalized assistance along the way with a team of specialists whose job it is to make sure you have true peace of mind. It's important to understand that estate planning is a journey, and rest assured that our team will be available to you all along the way and at every step. Welcome to Estate Plan, home of the last estate plan you'll ever need. To learn more, make sure to reach out to your local advisor licensed with us, or go to our website for more information.
What's up, Enrichers? Tim James here with my co-host Carter Wilcox. And today in the house, we've got Mark Willis, certified financial planner, and he's a man on a mission. He has a podcast himself called the Not Your Average Financial Podcast. So check that out. So Mark, you talked a lot about your backstory. It was really cool. Why don't you get into like, what are you doing day to day right now to help people protect their money, grow their money, succession planning, all that kind of stuff?
Well, money is one of those interesting features that's not important in and of itself. It's just a tool, but it seems to touch all the really important things in one's life, like family and legacy and, you know, the business that you might have, love, your relationships. And so it's a privilege to get to work with folks all over the country. And I know a lot of your listeners are advisors as well. And it gives, I think, a lot of meaning to what we do, to realize that we make a big, maybe the biggest impacts and changes to one's financial life. It's just a privilege to say at the end of the day, wow, we helped a family X, pay off their mortgage, or help their kids get through college and set up their degrees for their future success, or, not just leave money to the people, where I think a lot of people think estate planning is done is just, hey, we'll just pile up a big pile of money and give it to the people. But you don't just want to prepare the money for the people. You want to prepare the people for the money. And part of what we get to do as financial professionals is you get to prepare the people for the money. And you get to talk to the kids about, here's what mom and dad believed about you, and here's what they thought that this money would help you become. Not just here's what we're going to give you. We're not just going to give you here's our old IRA. Hope you have a great life. But how are we going to make you a better person? What does our family truly stand for? And those are the kinds of things we just get to do on a daily basis. Isn't that awesome? So anyway, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Nice. So So you've got also an advisory group, right? So you have other advisors that you mentor, coach, train, all the things that you've learned along the way and everything. So approximately how many advisors are you currently, working with in your practice?
Well, there's kind of layers to the onion, if you will. So there's about a half a dozen that are in my firm. And then there's about 2 or 3 dozen that we're training in a regular way through a couple mastermind calls that we do each month and several podcast guesting courses that we've made and training courses and marketing courses and lead generation courses and product development courses. And then beyond that, I'm a part of a mastermind set of 200 Bank on Yourself professionals, which span the country and Canada. 200 plus people in this group that constantly are adding to my knowledge and helping teach me how to be a better professional in my field as a certified financial planner. So that's sort of the layers of the onion that will typically engage in, say, a given month.
Nice. Awesome. So with the idea and the intention for them to eventually like take over for you, or for you to grow it out where you sell the whole thing off, what do you think the success, your own succession plan is? Have you thought that far ahead?
Yeah, you got to have an exit strategy for everything you do in life, whether it's, your business or, heck, just getting on the expressway. You need an exit plan before you get on that expressway. So, to me, I'd say, wouldn't it be cool if 10% of America had financial strategies set in place that they absolutely did not have to worry about uncertainty, who's going to be in office when they retire, what tax rates are going to be when they retire, what the estate tax exemption is going to be when they retire or pass away. Wouldn't it be cool if they had sound money solutions that were under their control and they could have a predictable outcome on it? If just 10% of Americans could take back control of banking and their retirement futures, what would that do to the credit card industry? What would that do to the divorce rate? What would that do to, kids' college loans and student loan debt in this country at $1.7 trillion at this point? I mean, if just 10% of America did that, we'd see a revolution in a good way toward financial sanity. That's kind of the ultimate end game. Now, more directly for me, yeah, at some point, it'd be great to have other people who can run this at a much better rate than I could, as it's just little old me with my 4-pound knot of neurons in my head. So you're always looking for good team players, people who are willing to be a part of something bigger.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, the advisors that you're bringing on and everything, are they finding you, or do you have a mechanism that you're going out and trying to find them?
Well, a little of both, a little of both. There's folks that I know that we've brought on. I've reached out to some people who I thought would be a great fit as partners with me in the business and as advisors trained by me. Then there's the group I mentioned, the Bank on Yourself Professionals Program. It's about 200 advisors across the country. There's several different folks in that community who regularly send me new people. They're saying, hey, Mark, looks like this person would love to have a hand in mentoring them to become successful in the practice. So they'll have me train them, me and our team members here train them to become to help them reach their potential. Nice.
So you yourself and then your advisors, is there a kind of a demographic and like an age demographic that you guys are primarily, looking to target and to work with, or does it run the whole gamut?
Well, given that, most Americans have I guess to your question, there's a lot of markets that one might attempt to focus on. I have my own particular niche, but each of our colleagues and advisors might go after different directions in different niche markets. So yeah, to your point, maybe it's dental students with $450,000 of student loan debt, which is the average for dental student grads, by the way. Wow. $450,000. Maybe it's real estate investors. That's when recent focus that I've seen and had a lot of fun getting to speak with real estate investors. Maybe it's folks who would like to create a new type of asset for their family's legacy. Some of the stuff that you guys specialize in. So there's lots of different market niches among the different advisors that we work with.
So you yourself, though, what's the age range that you're typically working with day in and day out?
Yeah. This is going to sound cliche, but I'd say, and this is probably true regardless of industry, but I'd say my age range is 10 years younger than me and 10 years older than me is typically the bell curve, and I'd probably say that's true for health, health coaches and chiropractors and dentists. We tend to just be around people somewhere around 10 years younger and 10 years older. Now, I was listening to Dan Sullivan yesterday. Dan Sullivan's a marketing guy. Oh, yeah. And he was saying he's going to live until he's 156 years old. And so he's wanting to hang around with teenagers right now. He's like 75 years old or something like that right now. So he's hanging out with teenagers so that he's got some people to hang out with when he's 156. I just think that's really cool. So anyway, there's your answer as far as age range. But as far as like the temperament or the ideal client, to your question, it's people who of any age range are looking to have some more, essential control over their money. There's 401ks, there's IRAs, don't necessarily have the access or control over those that you might otherwise want to have, especially if they're like, again, part of our ideal client would be a business owner who wants control over their assets, wants some money on the balance sheet of their business, and doesn't necessarily just want to put it into a tax-deferred vehicle that might get taxed to death in the future.
Gotcha. So we were, I just was sharing this with, I think maybe our last recording, one of the things that we pride ourselves in with, as we call CSI Financial Group, which is, our financial arm, if you will, and the insurance solution arm. We call ourselves a PDO, or practice development organization, right? And one of the things that we educate our advisors on when they're incorporating all of our processes and our using our entire ecosystem is to try to create, in order to grow your practice, you need to create as many 4A clients as possible. And what does the 4A stand for? And this is my part where I'm going to impart my wisdom on you, or whatever the case may be. But a 4A client is this: they need to have the right attitude with the right aptitude with the proper amount of assets, who can become an advocate, right? So if you can get those types of clients, right, it's the recipe for successfully growing your practice, which is why our entire foundational approach is estate planning, right? Because that then leads to literally everything else that an advisor wants to do, right? Product is not the unmet need in our industry. And I don't care if it's assets under management or life insurance or annuities or REITs or whatever. Plenty of products to go around, right? But to work with your best ideal clients, you need to find something that truly differentiates you, that is a need that people have, right? And sometimes they don't know that they need estate planning, right? And as I was saying, before we started recording in pre-show, that we've sort of reframed what estate planning is. What is estate planning? Well, estate planning is simply this: it's family succession planning. If you have a family and you want to have a succession plan, then you need estate planning. Has nothing to do with how much assets that you have. You do not have to have, $50 million. And like, spoiler alert, every advisor wants to work with someone who has $50 million, right? But the underserved marketplace that's out there right now, day in and day out, are Tim's parents. Tim's his parents are on our estate planning platform because they needed to get that type of work done. They're not millionaires. They're not multimillionaires, but they definitely need to plan their estate, AKA everything that they own. And, ultimately at the end of the day, and this is sort of my why, if you will, Mark, is the family fracturing that happens when you don't do this is catastrophic. And that's the reason behind the phrase or the terminology that I'll give here that a lot of people may not have ever heard, but it's...
Well, hey, Carter, before you get into this, I want to tell you a story. Like, when I went back to Eastern Oregon this weekend, I was putting that driveway in, getting it all prepped up for the construction workers to put the new driveway on my parents' property on the farm.
Yep.
my dad, he has a hard time he has to be in control of everything. He actually worked on the state highway department. He knows how to build roads and all that stuff, but he can't hardly get around and all this stuff. So anyway, we moved everything out of the way, and he jumped into his pickup that we put up on this berm, and he started driving off, and he went into the mud because he couldn't tell. We went in the other way, it wasn't. And I said, Dad, what are you doing? He's like, oh, you're doing all this stuff. And he's like, I'm putting this pickup where I want it. Right. And then I was like, well, you're in 2-wheel drive. You're stuck. You need to put it in 4-wheel drive. And he just kept it in 2-wheel drive, and he just kept digging, and he dug a big rut and got the hell out of there, and he did it his way. But then he was so pissed, he drove down the road, got on the county road, and took off. And he has macular degeneration. He doesn't have a driver's license. Hadn't had one in years. He can't see. I mean, if I'm 8 feet away from him, he doesn't know I'm his son. That's how bad it is. He takes off because he's so pissed. Well, luckily we're on a county road, but there's some new people that have moved down in there. So another car went by. But the first thing my son was like, we got to go stop Grandpa. We got to get him. I said, just let him lose the steam here. He's just going to go to the end of the driveway. But he kept going. I said, well, don't worry about it. We have a estate plan in place in case he wrecks everything, but let's go get the keys and go get him. But it was comforting to know that if he wrecked or hurt somebody else and we got sued or whatever, that my mom and the property, everything was protected. The bank accounts are all protected because we had it in that estate plan. You don't know what somebody's going to do. My dad's big about safety and stuff like that. And we end up, he moved over and my son drove him back, but the emotions took over. And he made something that he would normally not do because he's all about safety. But what would happen if he would have hurt somebody?
Yeah.
Right? What do you have in place to protect yourself, to protect your wife? Maybe protect your wife from yourself. You never know what things are going to change. They put you on those pharmaceutical drugs and they mess with your freaking mind.
Or vice versa, yourself from your wife too,
Yeah, or vice versa, right?
Yeah. So
somebody going gunny sack,
That's
basically.
right.
Yeah, so it's really, really important, Mark, and I know that you are fiduciarily obligated to take care of your clients in the best way. Which I got to tell you, the whole fiduciary thing, it kind of falls flat for me a little bit because it's like, who are you? You mean you didn't have my best interest at heart originally? Is that what you're trying to tell me? But now you got this designation, and now all of a sudden you do? Like,
yeah.
It's so silly to me.
Yeah, it's a little overkill. I'd say the first thing I say is, yes, I'm a fiduciary, and so was Bernie Madoff. So what does that say? The point is, do we trust each other enough to do business together?
Yeah.
And don't work off labels. Don't work up whether it's a product label, 401k, life insurance, or whether it's a person label, CFP, fiduciary, life insurance agent, investment manager. Don't work off labels. I'm sure that the fewer labels on the food, the better, Tim. And the same goes true for your money. Same goes true for the team on your money. And that includes your estate planning attorney and more. Someone once told me, this is Amy Castoro, the president and CEO of the Williams Group. She says that 70% of families lose all of their wealth after 3 generations. And she said that 60 out of that 70%, 60%, they did a survey of over 2,500 families, and they said that the biggest problem was trust in the communication. It wasn't we picked the wrong stock. It wasn't their real estate crumbled. It wasn't high tax estate taxes. The biggest problem was communication. Does mom and dad even tell the kids that, or do they even tell them that they're not wealthy, but that they have an IRA and they got a house? And no, typically parents don't want to, upset the kids or ruin the kids by telling them all about their home they're going to leave, a couple $100,000 in a house or a couple $100,000 in an IRA. And then the kids get it and there was no communication. And what happens next? Drama ensues. Let's just say that. Drama ensues. So I have a saying, it's the estate plan is there to take care of your assets, but your legacy is going to be created through your communication skills. So figure out how you're going to talk to your kids, your parents, your whatever. If you're the child, talk to your dad, like Tim sounds like you've been able to do. So figure out how you're going to communicate your legacy. Your estate plan is there for your assets. Your communication is there for your legacy.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because that's one of the key components to our entire, what we call the estate plan portfolio, which is it also encompasses now I bought the company, which I'm not sure if I talked to you about this or not, but I talk about the question is, if I talk to an advisor, like, how do you win the relationship war? Now, I just read the statistic not too long ago. During the last 2 years, it used to be 10,000 baby boomers a day were retiring. Now it's 20,000 a day are retiring because of what's happened, right? So every single independent financial advisor, CFP, those that are working within that the boomer demographic, especially, they're all after the same ones because they've gone up the mountain and now it's time to come down, and it's the decumulation phase, right? Which is what you were talking about, Mark, earlier. That's whenever failure can really happen if you don't have the proper strategy in place, right? And understand the proper techniques to be able to come down the mountain, right? So we added, as part of our estate plan portfolio, it's not just about the document creation. That's the easy part, right? And we make that really super easy. But what we also added was the legacy planning part of it. So Epic Services was launched to be the estate and legacy planning solution for advisors and their clients, which may sound redundant, but it's not, because you just got through tying it in. But we added what we call legacy stories, and legacy stories is a part of that portfolio of a centralized area where families and what we call the legacy trustee, the family legacy trustee, documents and helps document, and we have an entire system to be able to do this, documents everything that's in the head and the heart of the matriarch and the patriarch before they pass away, so that it's documented and shared and exchanged amongst family members, so you never lose why or how the wealth was created and what they wanted, how they wanted it to happen. So the communication is impossible to break up, but you have to be able to document that. And that's part of our onboarding process and part of what the clients get using our services. So anyway, I just wanted to share that bit of information with you.
I think the best beneficiaries or heirs of any estate are the ones that understand their future role. They've bought into that role, and they look forward to performing that role and enjoying the family legacy that they're going to inherit. Too many beneficiaries just simply get a bunch of money and then they fight about it. And that's a shame. But if you've, like, I've got a bunch of families where we've invited them to do very simple things. I love your intentionality with the whole process. So we have very simple practices, like we'll invite the family to get together over Zoom, or we'll do it over their dinner room, dining room table, or in our conference room. And we'll just say, all right, your last name is Wilcox or Wilcoxon. So what is a value or an attribute or a principle of living that we can use for every letter of your last name? The last name is sort of what we all share in common. So what can we do? What does W stand for your family? Well, maybe it's, wealthy mindset. I might stand for independence. So you would just go through your last name and decide as a family what you're going to stand for. Because as the old saying goes, if you stand for nothing,
for anything.
Yeah. So with that in mind, lots of creative little ideas to kind of help the family gel, get a retreat set up, do this by the beach. We can pass out annual statements on all your accounts, and that's fine. But what does it truly mean to be a member of this family? Are we just individuals waiting for mom and dad to pass away so we can go blow it on the sports car?
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. Well, we could probably talk, for hours and hours, and I know that we want to definitely talk a little bit about, before we get to the next segment and everything, let's talk a little bit about your podcast, if you don't mind, and let's give that a plug and everything so that, our enrichers can get a chance to go check that out.
Sure. Yeah. Well, if you're an advisor like myself, that very often clients will ask you the same question over and over again. And really, the podcast was born out of my laziness to finally give a good answer to a question that I would continually hear from a client, and to put it in a podcast form that really answers the questions well. So it's my my financial distillery, if you will, of thinking carefully about the question and then coming up with research backing it up, and hopefully doing it in a mildly entertaining way as best as possible, and doing it in such a way that I can then send that episode to the 17,000 other people who asked me the same question, so I don't have to answer it again and again and again. So that's my insider scoop on the podcast. For the John Q public, it's just a not so average view on handling money. Like, where is it written? Where, was Moses bringing the 401k down from the mountain? I don't think so. So it's a not so average view of how to handle money in a way that helps you meet your objectives without necessarily dealing with the tomfoolery we see on the evening headlines, and helps you become your own source of financing. One of our strategies is Bank on Yourself, which helps folks literally become their own source of financing and take back control over the banking function in their life. And that's been very refreshing for a lot of our clients. It's one of the things we specialize in.
So what is the name of the podcast again?
The name of the show, thank you,
Yes.
is Not Your Average Financial Podcast. NotYourAverageFinancialPodcast.com is where you can go to see all 200 plus episodes where we talk about tax efficient strategies, bank business solutions, college planning without going broke. So it's NotYourAverageFinancialPodcast.com.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I don't know if we want to keep this for the next segment or not, but I know that you had asked pre-show about how did Tim and I even get together. So do we want to save that for and tie it into the question on the next segment?
Yeah, sure. We'll do that. Just keep it on timing.
Okay, cool.
All right. So we'll take a quick break, and when we get back, Mark's going to ask me any question on health and a special bonus section on Tim and Carter. We'll be right back.
You want the absolute best for yourself, and you want it to be easy. That's why we created Green 85. It helps with detoxifying the body gently. We're proud it's chemical-free, unlike almost all other supplements you'll find. Bottom line, Green 85 will get you healthier. We look forward to hearing what Green 85 did for you.
To get this product and our other amazing products, go to chemicalfreebody.com. That's chemicalfreebody.com.
What's up, Enrichers? Tim James here. I'm back with my co-host, Carter Wilcoxon. And we've got Mark Willis in the house. Mark, this is the section of the Health and Wealth podcast where we flip back over to health. And you get to ask me any question you want about health. So what's your question, brother?
How do you make it to 156 years old, like Dan Sullivan's going to?
You create a chemical-free, amazingly healthy environment. That's what you do. It's all about your environment. And part of that includes your attitude. So you have to have a really positive attitude, and you have to have a stress-free life. So stresses are going to happen. Some stresses are good. Like when you do push-ups, you're putting stress on your muscles. That's going to strengthen your bones so you don't get osteoporosis, osteopenia. And it also builds muscles so you can be strong. But there's other stressors that we are dealing with today, which are, financial stress. That's why we're trying to address that on this podcast. Health stress, we try to address that. Spiritual stress, emotional stress, relationship stress, 5Gs, Wi-Fi, smart meter stress. You have stress from toxins off-gassing in your house. So there's a lot of stressors out there. So if we can learn to be stress-free and get our body breathing air and drinking water and eating foods and getting in sunshine and getting back to things that are as clean and natural as possible, that's going to be your best bet on, if you want to live to 150.
When I talk to people about how long they're going to live, they say to me, Mark, I'll probably make it to 85 years old. Mm-hmm. And then I say to them something like, well, okay, so the year before you're going to be 84 years old. And how's your health at that point in the ideal world? And they'll say, well, I'll probably be in pretty good health. And I'll say, well, how many friends do you have still with you at that point? Oh, well, I still have lots of good, meaningful relationships. How's your finances? Oh yeah, we've got good finances, plenty of money in the bank. And I'll say, well, if you're 84 and you got less than a year to live and you're in that great a shape and you got great friendships and you got, plenty of money in the bank, do you really think you're going to just drop dead the very next year, or are you going to live some more? And they think, well, no, I'll probably live at least 5 more years,
All right.
We just added 5 years to their life just by having that conversation. So my question in all that, Tim, is how much of, I guess death is, well, there's accidental death. That's fine. But just our age limitation, how much is mindset? How much can you mess with age?
A lot. And this is actually, with there was that whole shift in the field of gene research and stuff. There was the Genome Project. All this billions of dollars was put into that human beings are amazing. We must have 1 million genes, and the earthworm has 20,000 genes roughly. And after the end of that project, they found out we have about the same amount of genes as an earthworm. It was really the interconnections that we have and the communications between the cells and stuff that makes us unique. So interconnections are really important. Also, there was work done with Dr. Bruce Lipton. You talked about epigenetics. I think you threw that word out earlier, which is he said it's the environment, stupid. Like, so if a cancer researcher is taking a healthy human cell and throwing it in a petri dish into a known carcinogen, they know it's going to cause cancer and mutate. Then they study that to come up with some synthetic compound to stop it because they can patent that and make money with it. My question is, why not just don't put it in the cancer causing environment in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
What a crazy concept, right? So what are the things that are, coming in to your body and stuff? But back to the mind thing, the mind is powerful. Dr. Joe Dispenza now, I don't know if you know that guy, but he broke his back really bad, got in a car accident or something, and was not supposed to walk again. He was laying face down for like 6 hours a day, and he used his mind. He was reconstructing his spine in his mind.
Wow.
And he actually reconnected neural connections and stuff and rebuilt his spine and was able to walk again.
Wow.
No surgery or nothing.
Yeah.
So now people are probably thinking, well, this is kind of crazy. Well, it goes back to even I think Tony Robbins was talking about this, where they took somebody that was shooting free throws and they shot 500 free throws. And they took somebody else that they had them visualize taking a free throw and a perfect shot and a perfect swish every time. And then they went and lined them up and they shot. And the person who practiced in their mind beat the person that had been practicing in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It actually built those neural connections. And then they also did it with piano players. They took 2 people that had never played a piano before, measured their brain connections and nerve connections and all that stuff. And then they had one person practice the piano and the other one virtually practicing in their mind. And they set them both down. The person who didn't practice could play the piano just as good or better than the person who had been practicing physically. You literally, by seeing it, it's believing is seeing. So you can actually build neural connections in the physical reality if you run it through your mind enough. So yeah, the mind is powerful. And there's also incidences where there was a little old lady walking down the hall in the hospital, and she overheard a couple of doctors talking about, she thought it was her, but it was somebody else. Yep, she's going to die tomorrow or 2 days or whatever it was. And guess what? 2 days later, that lady died.
Yeah.
She heard something that wasn't even, they were talking about somebody else. So the mind is all powerful. And you see this a lot too when you have a couple that's been together for 30, 40, 50 years. One of them dies and the other one might have been in pretty good health, but then, a month, 6 months later, they're gone.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They just don't have, it's like they lost their left leg. There's no purpose in going on anymore. And if you have no purpose, you're done.
Yep.
You're not going to hang around. So I think the mind is that's the whole new field. It's something that I want to work my way into, because I think that we can heal ourselves with a thought. I just don't know how to do it yet. So I'm doing it old school right now. I help people detox, nutrition. We do some basics to get their health back, but I know it can be done with a thought, and it's a very profound way of thinking. And I've seen too many incidents of it actually already working in real life with people, myself personally. So,
wow. Well, I think you're right. There's hormesis, which is the Greek word for growth under pressure. And there's a great book by the options trader, Nassim Taleb, and he wrote the book Anti-Fragile. And if you think about it, there's not an opposite to the word we think that the opposite of the word fragile is durable or strong or resilient, but that's not technically an opposite. Just withstanding pressure is different than actually improving in pressurized situations. So fragile is when something breaks under pressure. And the opposite of fragile, there is no English word, but we have the word hormesis, which just means it improves under pressure. So what actually could improve under pressure? You're right. We have a ton of stressors in our world today. Some are natural, some are unnatural. And a good workout is a great example of a good stress. And you have hormetic responses when you work out.
I think a good word there is resilience. Resilience is a good word, right?
Resilience makes you, yeah. If you interpret, like, if that's defined as like improving upon yourself under the weight of the stress that you find yourself in. So, it makes sense so much on the wealth side as much as the health side to have resilience, to use your word, or anti-fragility, like Nassim Taleb says. So what is in your health portfolio? And what is in your financial portfolio that actually gets better under stressful circumstances? You think about your stock market portfolio, it's not getting better under stressful circumstances. It's typically tumbling. And typical stressors, most of us have a waistline and have a bottom line, if you will, that under stress just gets bigger and wider. And, you got visceral fat, crawling around your organs and all sorts of terrible stuff. And you don't love when you poop, as your t-shirt says. So how can you actually get better under stress with your health? What's something, I guess my question here is, how do you actually make stress good for you?
Okay. That's an interesting question. I have something I want to share before I get into it. And one thing is, another example is our immune system. Many people listening may or may not know these terms, but you have what's called the innate and the adaptive immune system. These are the 100-year-old, 60-year-old model at best of the immune system. It's an antiquated view. There's another section of the immune system called the interferon system. And the interferon system actually welcomes viruses and bacteria into the system because it wants to be able to take a hit, and then it comes back 1,000 times stronger. And it actually makes thousands of variations of response to that virus and what changes it and variations it might make in nature after it leaves the body. Right. So it's quite powerful. So when you get a cold or a flu, you're actually becoming 1,000 times stronger on your immune system. So that's where you take a hit and come back stronger. That's resilience. Now to answer your question, sorry, I didn't bring any water up here and my throat's getting dry. Okay. So can you state your question one more time? The last part.
How do you make stress good for your health? How do you turn what could be a problem into a positive?
Oh, that's easy. So what you do is you don't look at it as a problem. You look at it as contrast. You look at it, everything is nothing. Here's one thing I learned, man, is that everything in life is meaningless except the meaning that you give it. Right? So when anything happens to you, even if it's another person, no matter what their intentions are, you learn to only take the good from it. Well, Tim, they stole my money and slapped me in the face. Okay, well, where's the benefit from you? Well, I won't ever deal with a person like that again. Okay, that's a benefit. I don't want to be like them, so I'm going to work on being a compassionate, heart-centered man rather than being a jerk. Like, or old school, like closed-minded, so there's always a benefit, because down the road, like I got ripped off by a guy for $2,500 back when I was in my 20s, and he was in a power position. He was like my general manager and stuff. But I learned from that. So he probably saved me $10,000 ripoffs and $50,000 ripoffs because I could smell a rat now, right? Because I'd already been down that road. So there's always a benefit if you look for it, always. And when things are going down in the crapper, the way if you think they are, that inertia that takes you down to the lows will also shoot you up to the highest highs. So the people that have had the most spiritual pain, that had to go through the most struggle, that also builds that resilience in you as a human being. So you can respond very easily to that stuff. It's the people that are sheltered, living in a bubble. Don't touch the dirt, Tommy. Oh, watch out. Don't bump your head. And it's like, and coddle. Now there's a point in time for that in the beginning, builds the ego and stuff to keep you alive or whatever. But then there's a point in time where mom and dad need to go. Right. And then you can't just, the shell needs to break on the nut so that the tree can grow. You just can't keep the shell on the nut the whole time. Right. So I just think it's really important that besides that, recognizing those principles is that everybody listening to this podcast needs to really have some tools to manage stress. And ask yourself that question: what tools do I have to manage my stress? Or maybe even better, maybe you don't even know you're stressed like I was. Like I was a guy, like, I'm not stressed out. I'm tough. Like, everybody has some stress, right? So first off, you might have to have the awareness that you even have stress and recognize that. And even though you don't think you have stress with what's going on in the world today, we live in a crazy world. Your biological system is stressed out. You have this thing called the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. That's your rest and digest mode versus your fight or flight mode. So when your body goes in that fight or flight response, your adrenals are getting shot up, your cortisol is getting blown out. And that's good if you're getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger, as they always talk about. But it doesn't work that good when you don't move. That's like these sports bars. You have these guys down there drinking beers and talking, and then their team scores, and they go freaking, whoa, there's my lamp. They go crazy. They freaking go crazy, and they get all this adrenaline and stuff. But guess what? It becomes toxic in the system because they didn't move. You're supposed to run. You're supposed to run or fight. You're supposed to use that adrenaline. You're supposed to burn it all up, and you're not. You just put it with some beer, creating toxin. It shouldn't be called a sports ball. It should be called a toxin bar, because the more excited you get about watching you literally need to move when you do that stuff. These are biological things that have been programmed in for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. So we have to recognize these things and understand that we're all stressed at some level. And the easiest thing to look at is just getting outside and walking around in nature and getting away from your damn cell phones and turn off the damn news. It's a 24/7 negativity device designed to create fear and hijack your prefrontal cortex and put you in fear mode. And then you become like a sheep. Like literally it's all programmed out. Right. Mm-hmm. So stay away from that stuff. Stay away from the electronics, the TVs, learn how to get good sleep, take care of yourself, put yourself first. And do some breath work and meditation, clear your mind, whatever you want to call it. If you think meditation's too woo-woo, don't use the word meditation then. Just clear your mind, sit quietly, clear your mind, go outside, walk around in nature, lay down in the grass. These are things that you can do to manage your stress.
Love it. That's great. Thank you.
So you're welcome. Is this the part where we get into the bonus section where
oh yeah, we'll have to do the bonus section.
I know that unless there's some more health,
what is the bonus section
that obviously Mark might want to ask. I'm not sure. I don't want to take away from the time of asking that.
Well, there's a I was just thinking as a response there, I think you're right. Having a world that we live in today, we have to decide how we're going to respond to the stress we're going to experience in our lives. Ernest Hemingway, he says in A Farewell to Arms, he says, the world breaks everyone. The world breaks everyone. And afterward, many are strong in broken places, but the world breaks everyone. So the question is, how are we going to reply and respond to that brokenness? Will we become stronger, or will we remain broken on the ground? So anyway, great stuff.
It's opportunities, man. That's what you got to look at. Again, it's all the meaning you associate to it.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, this feels like my Carter Samuel, my son's podcast today, but one of the things that I've told him as he's got his, golf journey and he's aspiring to be a golf pro and the whole deal, I say, look, son, you need to fail every chance you get, because the more failures you have, the more you'll learn from those failures. And that will make you a better golfer. And golf is such a sport. Talk about ego and blowing your ego up. It's literally the only sport that there is no perfect. It's impossible. You cannot perfect this sport. And and going back to our theme that we're talking about, and what I'm saying to him is, I'm like, it's okay to fail. I want you to fail. I want you to mess up every chance you get, because it's a learning experience if you look at it that way. If you take it as an opportunity to learn from it, the failure was actually a success. It was just in your mind. It was your mindset about how you took it, right? So, one of the greatest golfers of all time, arguably the greatest golfer of all time, Tiger Woods, I remember watching him, as he was going through, he would be like in the worst positions, and he'd be over here and he'd be under a tree and be around it. And I'm just like, it was because he had been in those situations so many times growing up as a junior golfer He's like, I've done this before. I can do this. I know how to escape. Right. And that's the thing. He didn't look at it as anything more than just a challenge. And that's the way, perspective. If you look at it that way, like this is just a challenge, and that can become almost stress-free because you embrace it as a challenge. Well, this is just a challenge. And of course, that's going to bring some stress. But if you look at it like a challenge instead of a stressful moment, maybe you just the mindset changes, fairly quickly from that perspective. But anyway, I wanted to give my 2 cents worth. So, Mark, we promised the Enrichers to talk a little bit about how Tim and I even got started. And it's an interesting story, and interject, Tim, along the way whenever you want. But, we wanted to start this podcast because we understood, and I'm going to tell you why we understood this, that health and wealth are interconnected. They are completely, they're not disconnected whatsoever. They're totally connected. And what was interesting is that I wanted to get my message out about what we were doing and trying to create, trying to help advisors grow their practice and using estate planning and all the tools and techniques we have and everything. So I wanted to get out there and get on podcast, right? So I ended up engaging the services of this company, and they reached out to Tim eventually to get me on his podcast. And Tim got on my calendar, which is really easy to do. Everybody knows my calendar is on my signature. If you ever want to schedule time with me, just go on my calendar and book some time with me. He gets on my calendar, and we had this meeting like on a Saturday. He blocked off like 15 minutes. We're 8 or 10 minutes into this podcast, and about him asking me, why do you want to be on my podcast? You're not even in the health industry or whatever. Why do you want to be on my podcast? Doesn't even make any sense. And so as I'm talking with him about 8 or 10 minutes into this 15-minute conversation, Tim goes, "Man, Carter, you should just start your own podcast." To which, of course, I'm like, dude, I got no clue where to even start, a podcast. He's like, look, if you want to start a podcast, I've got this this podcast group right here in my own backyard, right in Portland, Oregon. I'll hook you up if you're really interested in it. So anyway, we got to talking more and more and more. And this is how we really came to the understanding of why we, health and wealth are connected. Tim starts telling me his whole story about his health journey and how he healed himself. And he's giving me all this stuff. And I'm just like, my mind's blown. It's like, wow, that is like unbelievable. Like he got deep into a lot of stuff and really, revealed a lot of things about him that were very impressive for me. Well, during that conversation, come to find out, Tim was a former wealth advisor, and he understood my industry. So, eventually on that same exact phone call, I said, man, Tim, I said, how about this idea? I said, what do you think about starting our own podcast? And we'll call it the Health and Wealth Podcast Show. Tim, where do you go from there?
Well, we started it, and here we are.
So
I had a buddy that actually my guy that was my mentor. He's like, we should do, because when I left him and I was getting into this, and he had a radio show, and I was like, man, Jeff, we should do like a health and wealth like radio show or something, or podcast. And he's like, yeah, but he was kind of getting ready to semi-retire, so he was on his way out. That's why I was going to take over his practice. That's why everybody thought I was an idiot for leaving, because I'd put a lot of time, effort, energy. And boy, it's a lot of work to pass the Series 7 and 66. But, I did it, and I just let all that stuff go because I had to move on with, what gave me the most excitement. So it came around in a different form. It came around with Carter, and years later, and then poof, it manifested itself. So I just wasn't ready at that time for it. And then I was, and so was Carter. So here we are, 50 episodes in almost, and no end in sight, having a lot of fun.
Yeah. So there you go. There's your answer.
Love it. Cool. It's good to see people partnering up and changing the world, so from a whole body perspective. And I've been thinking about the phrase appreciation lately. There's two meanings to that word, appreciation. When you pay attention to something, it typically appreciates. And the idea of paying attention, that sounds like a financial term to me. It's an asset on the balance sheet. When you pay attention to something, it appreciates. And when you pay attention to whether it's your money, your balance sheet, or your health, it will appreciate, and you will appreciate it. You tend to value things that you pay attention to, whether it's your health or your wealth, or, and unlike me, your golf game. It will appreciate. So, in fact, I jokingly say if I could just change my golf score and my bowling score, I'd be great at both sports. So keep up the great work, man. And thank you for letting me come on your show today, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Our pleasure. So, hey, and Richards, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. To be able to see all of our previous guests, like our fantastic Mark Willis, go to our website, www.thehealthandwealthpodcastshow.com, and make sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast, at Google Podcast, Podbean, Apple, or Spotify. For my co-host, Mr. Chemical Free Body himself, Tim James, I'm Carter Wilcoxon, CEO and founder of CSI Financial Group and co-founder of Epic Services Company. Mark Willis of Lake Growth, thank you so much for joining us today. You are absolutely a treat, and we look forward to being able to maybe catch up with you and see how things are coming and going with you as you continue growing out your practice.
Thank you guys for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Richards. Hey, thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. And Richards, until next time, have a great, wonderful, abundant life, and we'll see you next time on the Health and Wealth Podcast Show. Hey, and Richards, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Wilcoxon.
And I'm your host, Tim James. And by God, we are committed to helping you guys have fat wallets, flat bellies. So tune in again for another episode, and make sure to like, share, and drink a lot of water.
Or beer.
You have just listened to the Health and Wealth Podcast with Carter and Tim.